Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, good afternoon and welcome to Oakland University's first ever debate between the OU Republicans and Democrats. Today we've got several topics. We've got gun control, drug legalities, education reform, abortion, welfare reform, and healthcare that we're going to talk about.
Hello, my name is Sarah Dadashzadeh, and I am the Vice President of the Democrats of OU, and I am really happy to be here today to discuss all these great topics.
I'm Ryan Day. I'm a chemistry grad student here at Oakland. I just started here with the OU Democrats, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Hello, I'm Javante Jones. I'm the President of the OU Democrats, and I'm a political science major.
The Democrats support requiring every gun buyer to pass a criminal background check, submitting records of prohibited purchases to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, and making gun traffic a federal crime, as well as trying to limit the amount of assault weapons and high magazine capacity guns that are in system in this country.
I'm Michael Benarian. I'm the fundraising coordinator for the OU Republicans, and I'm a econ major and political science major.
Hey guys, my name is Chase Hamburg. I'm undecided right now.
Alright, my name is Andrew Baker. I'm chairman of the Oakland University College Republicans. I'm a sophomore here, and I'm studying finance. And we're going to talk about today how that's not going to work, whether we're going to talk about the cities that strict gun laws have been forced on and haven't worked, and how that's really hurting the foundation of what our country has been founded on. Our country was founded on the belief in the Second Amendment and the belief that we have the ability and the right to protect ourselves against not only others, but against any sort of tyrannical influence from.
So should there be universal background checks for persons trying to purchase a firearm?
Yes, there should definitely be universal background checks.
And I would just like to point out, the Democrats are not saying we want to take away guns from law-abiding citizens. No one is saying that. What we want to do is make sure that the guns do not get in the hands of criminals and other people who would use it to commit very violent acts.
All right.
The statistics are pretty clear. I think people are aware of this. I don't think they're manipulation. I think when you turn on the news and you see that the Virginia Tech shooter and the guy who shot Gabby Giffords both legally bought their guns without a background check through a loophole, when they know that there are 6.6 million guns every year that are sold without a background check, they think that something common sense should be done. That's not a manipulation of any facts or statistics.
Would argue the fact that you are trying to take away guns.
90% of voters have stated that they support an increase in background checks in this country.
And there are background checks, and it's a
they support an increase in the way we do our background checks. An increase.
And I would wonder how 90% of those people even realize that there's already background checks, because it's very easy when you repeat a lie over and over again. It's very, it becomes the truth. You're providing an argument to put more restrictions on guns based on arguments of people doing things that are already illegal. And what I mean by that is, you brought up people selling guns online illegally, people doing things like that. We already have laws in place, like the assault weapons ban, which was passed in 1934. We have other gun restrictions that are at the state level. All of these things are there to prevent some of the things that you have listed out from happening. And I think one of the solutions is to better enforce the laws that are already there.
We want to move on to the next topic. Our next topic is drug legalities.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is David Rowe. I'm a junior-ish here at Oakland University, and I'm an OU political science major. And I want to start off by saying that on this side of the table, I'm philosophically more libertarian-leaning than my colleagues here. Personally, I personally oppose drug prohibition of all kinds. I think we should legalize all drugs for two reasons. One, I don't believe the government should be in the business of criminalizing victimless behavior, something that harms nobody else but themselves. And two, the war on drugs has been proven to be an epic failure.
I have zero disagreement with what this man just said, so my rebuttal is ditto.
I don't think certain drugs that are so incredibly highly addictive, that's just an unfair business model. You shouldn't be able to sell a substance that you have to go to a clinic to stop using if you want to stop using it.
The Democrats agree on this issue, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I kind of see the same principle applying to the drugs. to the gun issue, because they're saying, well, because they're in agreement. They're saying, yeah, if people want to go out and get drugs, they're going to do it anyways. The government can't stop that. If people want to break the law, they're going to break the law. It all comes back to your own moral code and your own ethics.
All right, if abortion is next, then we have the Students for Life from Oakland University who are here. We're going to take over.
Okay, so yes, we are the Students for Life. I'm the president of Students for Life this semester. And my name is Myrna Aro, by the way.
Hi, my name is Christina Lopiccolo, and I'm the secretary for Students for Life.
Yes, and I'm majoring in engineering biology, and I hope to go to medical school one day.
And I'm a major in wellness and health promotion.
And we're both sophomores.
The debate over whether or not abortion should be a legal option continues to divide Americans long after Roe versus Wade. So the first question is, should abortion be legal? But before we get into those questions, let's start with an opening statement from both sides.
Okay. As was said, abortion is a hot topic in this country. And while I personally do not support abortion for just because you ended up getting pregnant because you forgot to use a condom, and I do think that I have no right to tell another woman what she should do to her body. I do not think we should be having parents bring in kids into this world that do not want the kid, that will end up being neglected or abused. And also a lot of things with abortion. Laws against abortion are not stopping abortion, they're just simply making it less safe.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start off with kind of a silly question. Who here knows how babies are made? By show of hands. Okay, there's a few of you in the back. I'm going to have to talk to you afterwards. All joking aside, the reason I'm asking this question is because the abortion debate can get messy and sloppy really quick if we don't actually focus on what the debate is really about. The debate is saying, if the unborn baby is a human being, then abortion is morally impermissible. And if we don't focus, yes, there's issues with women's health, and yes, women have to go through a lot of things when they're pregnant, but that's not the issue we're discussing. If the unborn fetus is a human being, then abortion should not be legal.
It's about, when is this a person? And it's easy to look at a late-term fetus and say this looks like a person at this point. But without thoughts or a brain or feelings or anything, I think it's more of a continuum than a strict absolutism.
Okay, who here believes that people under anesthesia and people who are in reversible comas should continue to live? Please raise your hand.
Why do you think they should continue to live? Is it because they're still humans, even though they may not be able to be feeling pain? They may not be able to reason. They may not be able to communicate. They're not full functioning human beings, but they still have the capacity to be. That's what we're speaking of.
Do you agree with that? That the fact that there is a certain time in the pregnancy where if the child if they were to perform a delivery, that child would not actually be alive on its own?
There is such a thing as viability, that's correct, but also if you were to leave a newborn alone and you were not to feed that child, then that child will also die.
Yeah, and that's what happens when people are forced to have pregnancies that they don't want, and they end up putting their babies in the gutter. What is the country doing for the children that are out there? Because there are a lot of kids in the foster system that are not going to make it in this world. There are a lot of kids being abused by their parents. There are a lot of kids being abused by foster care parents. There are a lot of kids who just don't have anyone taking care of them because there isn't anyone who cares. There's 1 million homeless youths in America alone. 1 million. Homeless children in this country.
All right, I'd actually like to say
the number one factor for a child being homeless is physical or sexual abuse at home. Perhaps these
liberals on this issue is that you try to separate the issue into a women's issue. And if we want to do that, I'll do it. Let's go here. Women. I'm very much pro-women's rights. And I'm pro-women's rights, including the rights of the women that are unborn. Are you aware of gender-selective abortions, yes or no? Yes. Yes? We had a yes.
Okay. Yes.
Gender-selective abortions are when Americans go into a abortion facility, some of which are Planned Parenthood, which are government-funded, and they get abortions based on the gender of the child. 85% of the time, that child is aborted because they are women. So I'm very much pro-women, and I find it insulting that liberals constantly bring up the women's issue on this, because nowhere in this argument have we ever said, well, it's because, women shouldn't have the right to do this. It's because the life that is conceived in the womb should have the right to life.
I don't think you guys have stated what your position is on the life of the mother and in cases of rape and incest.
Pro-life, no exceptions.
So is it like that one senator who said that if a woman gets raped, she should be forced to have a child she didn't want because God intended that rape?
Okay, so in cases of rape, so somebody attacked the woman. Why should the woman go ahead and attack her unborn child? So why should she kill her child just because somebody hurt her?
Why should she spend 9 months of her life reliving the rape, the incident that occurred? Why should she spend?
Why should she have that special right to kill a child? Why?
Why should the child gain the death penalty for the crime of its father? And actually, research shows that women have a much easier time healing from rape when they actually go through with their full pregnancy and either keep their child or give their child up for adoption, because adding a tragedy to another tragedy, 2 wrongs does not make a right.
It's no stranger to controversy, so we're not going to avoid it here. So our first question is the Affordable Care Act fair?
What we intend to show is that Obamacare is a catastrophic failure. It is destroying jobs, destroying health insurance, destroying our economy. And we need to recognize the problems with a nationalized healthcare system, a socialized healthcare system, recognize that Obamacare is no different from these other failed systems, and talk about true healthcare reform and really just scrap this whole thing, because it is a monstrosity of failures.
I do agree that the healthcare system in this country needed a revamp. We were allowing too many people to be punished for being sick. We were allowing too many people to drown in debt. And the insurance companies were more focused on making a profit than actually doing their job of paying for your insurance. And so, Obamacare is not a catastrophic failure in this country. And so let's focus on the fact that Obamacare has protected people and is providing people with an option to be able to not be punished for being sick.
Okay, I just want to point out the irony in Obamacare. First of all, people on the left, the far left, well, even Democrats in general, oppose monopolies. They hate monopolies. They think it's a product of capitalism. They think it's just bad for everything. But what's so ironic here is that Obamacare essentially monopolizes 1/5 of this country's GDP, and it monopolizes the healthcare system in this country.
Let's be honest, when people can't afford healthcare, they end up going to the ER. And then they end up not being able to pay the bill. And guess who pays the bill? We end up still paying the bill for people who go to the emergency room and can't afford it.
Okay, so one of the topics, I just want to get this out of the way really quickly. I think everybody in this room agrees that we need comprehensive healthcare reform. I mean, by show of hands, who thinks we need comprehensive healthcare reform? Okay? There is definitely a problem with healthcare in this country. This discussion is why the president's solution is catastrophic. At the beginning of this legislation, we were told that this legislation was supported by doctors, by the American Medical Association, by AARP, okay? Now, the problem with this is that 70% of America's physicians disagreed with the American Medical Association's position.
Point out one thing, that we both do agree that the healthcare system in this country needed a revamp, but let's be honest about one thing about when you're saying that the president had to, I'm going to try and format this as best I can, lobby in a way. Let's be honest, every president has done that for every issue that they've had. Do you recall the Bush era when they said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and then found out that was completely false?
It doesn't mean it's justified.
It's not, I know, but let's be honest. We needed a healthcare reform. We needed a way to help people in this country. We needed a way to get people who are sick a chance to, or poor, a chance to be able to have
Okay, well, I'm glad he brought up Massachusetts plan, because we look at these policies and say, well, if a Republican did it, then that means it must be great. Well, Republicans don't always do things great, as you brought up George W. Bush, who is not my, hero. Now, Massachusetts. So the president did actually claim, as you claim, that he based this plan, it's almost identical, off of Governor Romney's plan in Massachusetts, and it, quote-unquote, works very well. Well, actually, that's not quite the case. Massachusetts, per capita, has more doctors than any other state by a huge margin. It also has the longest waiting times in the country by a huge margin. So if Massachusetts has the longest waiting time despite having the most doctors, then Obamacare as the same plan would be catastrophic to any other state that tried to implement this.
There's going to be issues. There's going to be dents that we're going to have to work through. But it's the only thing out there right now that is going to help people in this country. and we need to keep it up. We can't say it's a total catastrophe when there was no other proposal. There was no other proposal for revamping the healthcare system. There was no one trying to stop insurance companies from denying coverage. There was no one trying to stop insurance companies from saying, I'm sorry, that is a pre-existing condition, we will not pay for your treatment. There was no one trying to stop that.
As far as helping people, 5 million people have lost their health insurance since Obamacare was implemented, my parents being 2 of those millions of people. The coverage under Obamacare has decreased drastically because what's happening is these health insurance companies, okay, are dropping patients. And then you have this Obamacare system. You say, oh, well, Obamacare, we can all go on if we don't have health care. Well, the problem is that Obamacare is only for people who can't afford health care. If I'm making $40,000 a year, I'm not allowed to go on the Obamacare system to get government subsidies to help pay for my health care. And also, the health insurance companies are now charging more in deductibles and premiums than they were previous to Obamacare. So not only can I not go on Obamacare to get subsidies to quote unquote help like you keep saying, but these health insurance companies are forced to have prices shoot up. And that's because when you add 30 million people onto a healthcare system and you do not allow them to judge based on pre-existing conditions, which is a slightly different topic, when you do stuff like that, you have to compensate. And the fact of the matter is that if you add sick people to a healthcare system, these insurance companies are going to have to pay more money out more frequently than they used to, which means your healthcare is going to cost more. Your deductibles are going to cost more.
Your deductibles are going to cost more anyway when they went to the emergency room.
My parents' deductibles were quadrupled under Obamacare. You cannot justify something like that when my parents could barely afford health care when they can, and the government considers my parents rich, and so they're not allowed to get subsidies. So how is that helping my parents and the other 5 million Americans that lost health insurance and the patients that lost their cancer treatment because of Obamacare? It's a detriment to our society. It was passed by Congress by a narrow margin, by Democrats who didn't read it, who blatantly hid the cost of this program, who exempted themselves from it. If it's so great, why did they exempt themselves from it? A legislation which doctors didn't even support.
That's all, folks.